While I was watching my 7-year-old daughter Sophia attempt her first ski run on New Year's Eve in Aspen, my phone buzzed with a video call. I almost didn't answer. It was Richard Chen, my stepfather and the CEO of Vitacor Pharmaceuticals, where I'd spent the last 2 years building our marketing department from the ground up. The executive retreat was mandatory, he'd said. Team bonding, he'd called it. But I'd managed to carve out this one morning for Sophia before the scheduled meetings began. I answered, steadying my phone against a ski pole. Richard's face filled the screen, and behind him, I could see the entire executive team gathered in the resort's conference room. My stomach dropped. "Maya," he said, his voice carrying that particular edge I'd learned to recognize. "We have a situation. Your campaign for Neuroclear leaked to Apex Pharma this morning. Their press release went live an hour ago. Same messaging, same positioning, same creative direction you presented to us 3 weeks ago." The ski slope seemed to tilt beneath my feet. "That's impossible. I never." "Security is investigating now," he continued, cutting me off. His face remained perfectly composed, but I caught the slight smile at the corner of his mouth. The same smile he wore when he told my mother he was promoting me to Chief Marketing Officer 2 years ago. The same smile that had made me believe he actually valued my work. "Given the severity of industrial espionage, I'm afraid I have no choice but to terminate your employment, effective immediately. Don't bother coming to the office. We'll have your things sent to you." 12 faces stared back at me through the screen. Some looked uncomfortable, most looked away. Not one of them spoke up. "Richard, I never leaked anything. Someone on your team must have. This is not up for debate, Maya. The evidence is clear. Your access credentials were used to download the campaign files 3 days ago. IT has the logs." He paused, and that smile grew wider. "I'm disappointed. I expected better from family." I hung up. My hands were shaking so badly I nearly dropped the phone. Sophia was waving at me from the bottom of the beginner slope, her pink jacket bright against the white snow, completely oblivious to the fact that her mother had just lost everything. I stood there for a long moment, watching her. Then I opened my texts and found the message from Dr. Lisa Park, my mentor from graduate school, that I'd received 3 months ago. "Still thinking about that coffee I offered. My door's always open if you want to talk." I typed back, "How about this week? I think I'm ready for that conversation." Her response came within minutes, "Say when." I looked up at the mountain, at my daughter, at the perfect blue sky that suddenly felt like a mockery. Then I tucked my phone away and skied down to Sophia. Whatever came next, she didn't need to see her mother fall apart. Not yet. The truly devastating part wasn't the firing itself. It was how long I'd seen it coming without wanting to believe it. 2 years earlier, my mother had married Richard Chen at a small ceremony in Napa Valley. She'd been widowed for 5 years, my father dying of a sudden heart attack when I was 32. Richard was charming, successful, and seemed genuinely devoted to her. When he offered me a position at Vitacor 3 months into their marriage, I'd been hesitant. "I don't want special treatment," I told him over dinner. Sophia had been 5 then, and I was still navigating single parenthood after my divorce from Marcus. "I need to earn my place. And you will," Richard had assured me. "I'm not offering you this job because you're my stepdaughter. I'm offering it because Vitacor needs someone with your expertise. We're about to launch a revolutionary product, and we need marketing leadership that understands both the science and the storytelling." I should have trusted my instincts. But I was tired, financially stretched, and the salary he offered would mean I could finally move Sophia and myself out of my mother's guest house and into a place of our own. The first year had been a whirlwind. Vitacor was developing Neuroclear, a cognitive enhancement supplement that Richard claimed would revolutionize treatment for age-related memory decline. My job was to build the brand, establish market positioning, and create a go-to-market strategy that would attract Series B investors. I poured everything into it. Late nights after putting Sophia to bed, weekends while she was with Marcus. Every spare moment I had went into building something remarkable. And it worked. My campaign caught the attention of 3 major venture capital firms. The messaging was clean, compelling, and backed by what Richard assured me was solid clinical data. Revolutionary results, he'd said in board meetings, always with his hand on the research reports I wasn't allowed to review directly. Proprietary methodology that our competitors would kill to access. Vitacor's valuation tripled. Richard's profile in Forbes called him a visionary. The Series B funding came through at $75 million. And in every interview, every press mention, every investor presentation, Richard Chen was the genius behind it all. My name appeared nowhere. It's not personal, Maya, he'd explained when I finally gathered the courage to ask why I wasn't being credited. Investors want to bet on the CEO's vision, not the marketing department. You understand how this works. Your stock options will reflect your contribution. Those stock options were now worth exactly nothing, frozen the moment he fired me. The second year had been worse. Richard began taking my campaign strategies and presenting them as his own ideas. He'd schedule meetings where I'd present concepts, then convene executive sessions without me and emerge claiming he'd refined my approach. The refinements were usually word for word what I'd originally proposed. When I tried to speak up about concerns, particularly about the clinical data that seemed statistically improbable, he'd smile that same patient smile and redirect. Trust the science team, Maya. That's not your area of expertise. But I'd seen the research. And something about the numbers didn't add up. Patient improvement rates that were too consistent. Trial results with virtually no dropout rate. Adverse event reporting that seemed impossibly clean for a neurological intervention. I'd mentioned it once to Richard, privately in his office. Are you questioning the integrity of our clinical team? He'd asked, his voice suddenly cold. Because that's a serious accusation, Maya. The kind that could damage your credibility if you're wrong. And I'd hate to see that happen, especially given how much your mother cares about your success here. The implied threat was clear. My mother's happiness was tied to this marriage, to this company, to Richard's success. Questioning him meant potentially destroying her life. Again, so I'd stayed quiet. Focused on the marketing. Told myself I was being paranoid. The lawsuit papers arrived at my apartment 3 days after the firing. Richard was suing me personally for $2 million in damages, claiming theft of intellectual property and breach of fiduciary duty. The allegations were detailed, specific, and completely fabricated. But they were also legally complex enough that defending myself would cost hundreds of thousands in legal fees I didn't have. My phone rang while I was reading through the complaint. Marcus. My ex-husband. Maya. What the hell is going on? His voice carried that particular frustration I remembered from the final years of our marriage. Richard called me. He said you were fired for corporate espionage. He said you might be unstable, that the stress of single motherhood combined with the demands of your job might be affecting your judgment. My blood went cold. He contacted you about Sophia. He's concerned. He says you've been erratic, paranoid about the company, making accusations about fraud. He thinks maybe I should consider requesting a custody evaluation. Marcus, none of that is true. Richard fired me to cover his own. I don't want to get involved in whatever's happening between you and your family, Maya. But I do need to think about what's best for Sophia. If you're really being sued for $2 million, if there's even a possibility you committed corporate espionage, I need to consider whether her primary residence should be. I hung up on him. It was either that or scream. Richard wasn't just destroying my career. He was threatening my daughter. I sat on my apartment floor, surrounded by legal documents and mounting panic, when my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Maya, this is Emma Chen from marketing. I know we haven't worked together much, but I need to talk to you. It's urgent. Can we meet somewhere private? Emma was 26, brilliant, and one of the junior marketers I'd hired 8 months ago. She was also on an H-1B visa, which meant her legal status depended entirely on her employment at VitaCore. We met at a coffee shop in Boulder the next morning. Emma looked like she hadn't slept in days. I need to show you something, she said, sliding a flash drive across the table. But first, you need to know that if anyone finds out I gave you this, I'll be deported. Richard made that very clear when he hired me. He knows exactly how vulnerable I am. Emma, you don't have to. Yes, I do. Her hands were shaking as she wrapped them around her coffee cup. Because you were the only person at that company who treated me like I had a brain. Who actually listened to my ideas. Who didn't just see me as the diversity hire. She leaned forward, lowering her voice. The NeuroClear clinical trials are fake, Maya, all of them. Richard hired a data analysis firm in the Philippines to fabricate patient results. The actual trials were inconclusive at best, showed potential liver damage at worst. But investors needed revolutionary results. So Richard gave them revolutionary results. I stared at her. How do you know this? Because I'm the one who organized Richard's emails for the investor data room during the Series B. I saw everything. The real trial results. The contracts with the fabrication firm. The emails where Richard explicitly instructs them to increase patient improvement rates to 93%. I saved copies of everything before the data room closed. Emma, if that's true, and NeuroClear launches, thousands of people will take a useless supplement that might cause serious liver damage. Yeah. I know. She pushed the flash drive toward me. That's why I'm giving you this. You're the only person I can trust. You're already out. You can't be threatened with termination. And I think, maybe, you might actually do something about it. He'll know it was you. Probably. But staying quiet makes me complicit. And I didn't come to America, didn't leave my family, didn't work my ass off to build a career just to help some narcissistic CEO poison people for profit. I picked up the flash drive. What do you need from me? File a report with the FDA. Anonymously if you can, but get this information to someone who can stop the launch. NeuroClear is scheduled to hit the market in 6 weeks. That night, I opened the files on the flash drive. Emma hadn't exaggerated. The evidence was damning. Emails where Richard explicitly discussed fabricating data. Contracts with the overseas firm. Side-by-side comparisons of real trial results versus the versions presented to investors. And most damning of all, a memo from Richard to his head of research. Solve the liver enzyme problem or remove it from the reporting. Investors won't fund a product with safety concerns. I was still reading when my phone rang. Dr. Lisa Park. I did some digging after your text, she said without preamble. Richard Chen has quite the reputation in pharma circles. Not a good one. 2 previous startups that folded under FDA investigation. A pattern of hiring and firing employees right before they'd vest stock options. And some very interesting questions about how Vitacor's clinical data is too good to be true. It's not, I said. It is too good to be true. Because it's fabricated. Silence on the line. Then, can you prove it? I have documentation. Then I think we need to talk in person. How do you feel about a flight to San Francisco tomorrow? I have a position opening up for a CMO at my company, and I have some contacts at the FDA who might be very interested in what you know. Dr. Lisa Park ran Meridian Therapeutics, a competitor to Vitacor that was developing an actually legitimate cognitive health treatment. I'd known her since graduate school, when she'd been my advisor for my master's thesis on pharmaceutical marketing ethics. The irony wasn't lost on me. I looked at Sophia's bedroom door. At the legal documents still spread across my floor. At the flash drive sitting next to my laptop. I'll be there, I said. The next 6 weeks were the most terrifying of my life. I started at Meridian, where Lisa gave me the freedom to build a marketing strategy around actual science and real clinical outcomes. I worked with FDA contacts to file a formal complaint about Vitacor's clinical data, providing Emma's evidence anonymously. And I watched as Richard's lawsuit against me ground forward. Each legal bill pushing me closer to bankruptcy. Marcus filed for an emergency custody hearing, citing my professional instability and pending legal troubles as evidence that Sophia should live with him full-time. My mother called, crying, begging me to apologize to Richard, to make things right. Whatever you did, Maya, you're tearing this family apart. I couldn't tell her the truth without risking Emma's safety. So I said nothing and let her believe I was the villain. Emma kept me updated on Vitacor through encrypted texts. Richard had hired a replacement CMO and was pushing the NeuroClear launch forward aggressively. He'd also started asking questions about who might have accessed certain files during the Series B data room. Emma said she was sleeping with her packed bags by the door, ready to run if he figured it out. Then, 4 weeks before the scheduled NeuroClear launch, federal agents showed up at Vitacor's offices with a warrant. The FDA investigation had escalated. Based on the evidence I'd provided, they'd obtained authorization to seize Vitacor's servers, interview staff, and review all clinical trial documentation. Richard was personally named in the warrant. Emma texted me 2 hours later. They took everything. Richard's losing it. He knows it was internal. He's threatening everyone. That afternoon, Richard called me. I almost didn't answer, but something made me pick up. You did this. His voice was pure venom. You leaked confidential information to damage the company. You committed federal crimes. And when I prove it, you'll go to prison. I reported healthcare fraud to the FDA, I said calmly. That's called whistleblowing. It's protected. Protected? You think hiding behind some legal technicality will save you? I will destroy you. Maya. I will take your daughter. I will take every penny you have. I will make sure you never work in this industry again. Is this conversation being recorded? I asked. Because I'm on a recorded line in my office at Meridian. And threatening a federal whistleblower is a crime. Richard. I could hear his breathing, heavy and angry. Your mother will never forgive you for this, he said finally. You've destroyed her marriage. Her happiness. Everything she built after your father died. No, I said quietly. You did that the day you decided lying was easier than earning. I just made sure you couldn't hurt anyone else. He hung up. 3 days later, Emma sent me a final text. Richard's been arrested. Healthcare fraud, wire fraud, securities fraud. The FBI took him out of the building in handcuffs. It's over. Vidacor's board immediately suspended Richard and appointed an interim CEO. The Series B investors filed suit to recover their money. Neuroclear's launch was cancelled. And Emma, who'd been prepared to lose everything, was instead offered a promotion by the new leadership and sponsorship for her green card application. The charges against me were dropped. Marcus withdrew his custody motion after his lawyer pointed out that being a whistleblower who stopped a dangerous drug from reaching market was probably not evidence of instability. And my mother called, her voice broken, to apologize. I should have listened when you tried to tell me something was wrong, she said. I just wanted so badly for things to work out. For our family to be whole again. We are whole, Mom. Just not the way you thought we'd be. She filed for divorce 2 weeks later. Richard, facing 15 years in federal prison, didn't contest it. 6 months after that terrible video call in Aspen, I stood on stage at a pharmaceutical industry conference, presenting the marketing campaign for Meridian's cognitive health treatment. The real one, backed by actual clinical trials and genuine results. In the audience sat Emma, now my director of digital marketing, and Sophia, who held a handmade sign that read "My mom tells the truth." After the presentation, a journalist approached me. You're the whistleblower from the Vidacor case, she said. The one who stopped Neuroclear from launching. How does it feel knowing you probably saved thousands of people from a dangerous product? I thought about that question for a moment. About everything it had cost me to get here. The fear, the financial devastation, the temporary loss of my mother's faith. The nights when I'd wondered if I'd made the right choice, if destroying my stepfather was worth destroying my family. It feels like I finally understand what my father used to tell me, I said. That your integrity is the only thing no one can take from you. But it's also the only thing you can give away. And once you do, getting it back is nearly impossible. Would you do it again? Knowing what you know now about the cost. I looked at Sophia, at Emma, at the room full of healthcare professionals who would now have access to a real treatment instead of a fraudulent one. Without hesitation, I said. Because some costs are worth paying. And some things matter more than approval. That night, my mother came to my apartment for dinner. She hadn't been there since before Richard, too caught up in her new marriage to visit. She watched as Sophia showed her the science project she'd been working on, talking excitedly about how she wanted to be a scientist like the ones who made real medicine. She's proud of you, my mother said quietly while Sophia was in her room getting ready for bed. She told me that her mom is a hero who stops bad people from hurting others. I'm not a hero, Mom. I just did what anyone should do when they find out someone's breaking the law. No. She shook her head. You did what most people don't have the courage to do. You stood up when it would have been so much easier to stay quiet. Even knowing what it would cost you. She paused. Even knowing it would hurt me. I'm sorry it had to happen that way. Don't be. You saved me from a man who turned out to be everything I thought I'd avoided after your father. Someone who put profit over people. Who manipulated and lied. She reached across the table and took my hand. You gave me the truth even when I didn't want it. That's more valuable than comfort. Sophia emerged from her room in her pajamas, and my mother pulled her into a hug, holding on longer than usual. Later, after they'd both left and the apartment was quiet, I stood at my window looking out at the city lights. My phone buzzed with a text from Lisa. Board approved your equity package today. You're officially part owner of Meridian. Congratulations, partner. I thought about Richard, sitting in a federal holding facility awaiting trial. About the future he'd planned for himself, built on lies and manipulation. about how quickly it had all collapsed once the truth came out. And I thought about Emma. About all the people on H-1B visas and work permits and temporary status who stay silent because speaking up means losing everything. About how many Richards exist in corporate America because good people can't afford to challenge them. I texted back to Lisa, we should start a scholarship fund for international employees in STEM. Help them build careers that don't depend on staying silent. Her response came immediately, I'm in. Let's do it. I set down my phone and looked around my apartment. At the furniture I'd chosen, the books on the shelf, the photos of Sophia and my mother, and the life I was building that belonged only to me. Not to a husband who'd left, not to a stepfather who'd tried to control me, not to anyone's expectations or approval. Just mine. Somewhere in federal prison, Richard was probably still telling himself he'd done nothing wrong. That I'd betrayed family. That the fraud charges were just a misunderstanding. But I knew the truth. And so did everyone else now. Your integrity isn't about what you can get away with. It's about what you refuse to compromise, even when the cost seems unbearable. It's about knowing that some fights are worth losing everything for. Because what you lose isn't yours to begin with if it requires you to betray yourself to keep it. Richard taught me that lesson, though not the way he intended. And I'd never forget it.